From a tiny Sicilian atelier in 1985, two outsiders built Dolce & Gabbana into the world's most audacious luxury brand, proudly provocative, shamelessly glamorous, and impossible to ignore. But controversy that once fueled their rise would later turn toxic on a global stage. Today, headlines overshadow collections, and the question is not just how a fashion giant lost its cultural relevance, but why it refuses to vanish even after scandals that would end most brands. What made Dolce & Gabbana so invincible, and does its story reveal the dark truth about the power and limits of outrage in luxury? Domenico Dolce grew up in the hills of Polizzi Generosa, Sicily, learning tailoring in his father's workshop, surrounded by the rituals and symbols of Catholic life. Stefano Gabbana, born in Milan, came from a world of graphic design, nightclubs, and the restless energy of the city. When they met in 1980, their backgrounds could not have been more different. But together they began to imagine a new kind of Italian fashion, one that would fuse the drama of Sicilian tradition with Milanese modernity. By 1985, they launched Dolce & Gabbana in Legnano, just outside Milan. Their first collection, shown in October that year, was a rebellion against the power dressing of the era. Instead of boxy suits and shoulder pads, they sent models down the runway in fitted dresses, black lace, corsets, and sheer fabrics, motifs that would become their signature. In 1986, they introduced the Real Women collection, using friends and local women as models, celebrating curves and sensuality drawn from the icons of Italian cinema. Religious iconography, rosaries, crosses, and Madonna-inspired prints appeared alongside bold prints, animal patterns, and crystal embellishments, all tied to a vision of Mediterranean glamour. Dolce was the craftsman, the hands behind the patterns and fabrics. Gabbana was the visionary, shaping the brand's provocative edge. Their partnership thrived on contrast, and from the beginning, their work was designed to provoke. For Dolce & Gabbana, excess, tradition, and controversy were not marketing tactics. They were the very fabric of the brand's identity. In 1993, the brand's ambitions leapt from Italian runways to the global stage. When Madonna stepped onto her Girly Show World Tour in a jewel-studded Dolce & Gabbana corset, the impact was immediate. Paparazzi flashes followed her across continents, and the label's name began to appear not just in fashion magazines, but in tabloids and TV segments from Tokyo to Los Angeles. The collaboration wasn't just a one-off. Madonna's team worked directly with Dolce & Gabbana to design more than 1,500 costumes for the tour, each piece produced through family-run workshops in Italy. Suddenly, what started as a small atelier in Legnano was dressing the world's most photographed woman. Orders poured in from department stores in New York, Paris, and Hong Kong. The brand's mix of Sicilian drama and urban sensuality was no longer niche. It was a global phenomenon, amplified by celebrity and spectacle. But when a brand's identity is built on provocation and excess, is there a line it should not cross? Should a luxury label ever be truly uncancelable, or does continued support send the wrong message? Comment below with your thoughts. In January 2007, Dolce & Gabbana released an advertising campaign that would ignite one of their earliest public firestorms. The image, models posed with knives and staged wounds, sparked more than 160 complaints in the UK alone. The Advertising Standards Authority banned the ad, and soon after, regulators in Italy and Spain followed. Newspapers ran headlines questioning whether the brand's taste for violence was art or exploitation. Dolce & Gabbana defended the campaign as creative expression, but the ads were quickly pulled from store windows and magazines across Europe. 5 years later, controversy struck the runway. In September 2012, the spring-summer collection debuted in Milan with models wearing oversized earrings that resembled colonial-era depictions of Black women. Critics and fashion journalists called out the earrings as racist, pointing to their resemblance to blackamoor figures, a motif rooted in Italy's colonial past. The backlash unfolded online and in print, with The Guardian and other outlets demanding accountability. Dolce & Gabbana issued no apology, insisting the pieces celebrated Sicilian heritage. The conversation around the brand began to shift. What once passed as Mediterranean excess now faced a new level of public scrutiny. The cycle repeated in March 2015, when an interview with Italy's Panorama magazine brought another wave of outrage. Asked about same-sex parenting and children born through IVF, Domenico Dolce described such families as not real, calling IVF children synthetic. Stefano Gabbana, himself openly gay, echoed the sentiment. The comments landed hard. Elton John, a parent through IVF, called for a boycott, and hashtags like #BoycottDolceGabbana trended for weeks. Fashion editors, often silent in the face of advertiser power, quietly distanced themselves. Months later, Dolce apologized in American Vogue, but the damage lingered. For many, the brand's provocations no longer seemed bold. They felt out of step with the world around them. By 2016, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Dolce & Gabbana released a pair of $2,395 sandals online, described in product listings as slave sandals. Social media erupted. Critics denounced the name as offensive and tone-deaf, especially given the growing global conversation about race and history. The brand quietly renamed the product, but offered no public statement. Each incident followed a similar script: a provocative move, a backlash, and a defensive or muted response. What once fueled the brand's mystique now drew condemnation. The conversation was no longer about the cut of a dress or the shimmer of a crystal, but about whether provocation had crossed into something more damaging. As the decade wore on, the stakes only grew higher, and the world watched to see if Dolce & Gabbana would adapt or double down. On November 20th, 2018, Dolce & Gabbana launched a series of short videos on Weibo and Instagram to promote an upcoming runway event in Shanghai. The campaign, titled #DGLovesChina, featured a Chinese model attempting to eat pizza, spaghetti, and cannoli with chopsticks, while a male voiceover offered patronizing instructions. Within hours, Chinese social media exploded with criticism. Viewers called the videos racist and outdated, accusing the brand of reducing Chinese culture to a punchline. By the following morning, the backlash had moved beyond comments and hashtags. Diet Prada, a prominent fashion watchdog account, reposted the videos alongside screenshots of alleged Instagram direct messages from Stefano Gabbana. The messages were filled with slurs and references to China as ignorant, dirty-smelling mafia and dog-eaters, and they spread rapidly. Gabbana and the official Dolce & Gabbana account both claimed they had been hacked, posting statements that they had nothing but respect for China and the people of China. The damage was already done. Hours before the show, Chinese celebrities and models began to withdraw. Zhang Ziyi, Li Bingbing, Chen Kun, and Diliraba Dilmurat publicly denounced the brand. The China Bentley agency pulled 24 models from the roster. Influencers and stylists urged followers to boycott. On November 21st, 2018, just 4 hours before the Great Show was set to begin, the Shanghai Municipal Administration of Culture, Radio, Film, Television, and Publication ordered the event canceled. The venue was evacuated. Hundreds of guests, including international press and industry leaders, were left stranded. Videos of the empty runway and abandoned seats circulated on Weibo within minutes. The commercial fallout was immediate and severe. E-commerce giants Tmall, JD.com, and Y Closet delisted Dolce & Gabbana products. Sephora and Lane Crawford pulled pulled beauty and fashion items from both online and physical stores. SKP, one of Beijing's most prominent luxury malls, removed the brand's displays. Shoppers filmed themselves returning or destroying D&G items, posting the clips as a public act of protest. By the end of the week, nearly every major Chinese retail partner had cut ties. As the crisis deepened, Dolce & Gabbana released a video apology on social media. Seated side by side, the founders addressed the Chinese people, insisting they had always loved China, and ending with duibuki, the Mandarin phrase for "I'm sorry." The apology, posted 5 days after the first videos, was widely criticized as too little, too late. Chinese state media dismissed the gesture, while Western outlets tracked the brand's eroding reputation in real time. For a brand that once counted China as nearly a third of its global revenue, the collapse was staggering. In a matter of days, Dolce & Gabbana became a case study in how quickly a luxury empire can lose its footing when cultural missteps collide with the speed of social media. The conversation no longer centered on fashion or craftsmanship. The spotlight had shifted to the brand's inability to understand and respect the audience it so desperately wanted to reach. Dolce & Gabbana's response to the China backlash followed a familiar pattern. First, deflection, then a tightly controlled display of remorse. Within hours of the leaked messages and the canceled Shanghai show, both the official brand account and Stefano Gabbana's personal Instagram posted statements denying responsibility. They insisted their accounts had been hacked, and they said they had nothing but respect for China and the people of China. The hack claim was met with deep skepticism, especially among Chinese consumers and Chinese media, who pointed to the designer's long history of provocative public statements. Days later, the founders appeared together in a video apology. Seated side by side, they addressed the Chinese people, said they were very sorry for what happened, and emphasized their love for China, ending with a carefully spoken duibuki. The video, released 5 days after the first backlash, was widely criticized as too little, too late. This was not the first time the brand had turned public outrage into a spectacle. In 2017, as calls for a boycott spread online over their support of Melania Trump, Dolce & Gabbana released a capsule of white T-shirts printed with the hashtag Boycott Dolce & Gabbana and a red heart, modeled by the designers themselves. What began as criticism became a marketing opportunity. Even in apology, the founders positioned themselves as misunderstood, more besieged than culpable. The gesture was less about contrition and more about reclaiming the narrative, turning backlash into another chapter of their self-styled martyrdom. Gucci and Prada faced their own high-profile crises in the same years that Dolce & Gabbana was making headlines for controversy, but their responses could not have been more different. In February 2019, Gucci pulled a black turtleneck sweater from stores after critics said its mouth cutout resembled blackface. The brand's apology landed within hours, followed by a promise to hire global directors of diversity and inclusion. Gucci launched scholarship funds, new training programs, and brought in outside advisors to overhaul its internal culture. Prada, after backlash over window displays featuring monkey figurines in December 2018, responded by removing the products and assembling a diversity council led by artist Theaster Gates and filmmaker Ava DuVernay. Both brands issued multiple public statements, met with advocacy groups, and made visible changes to their leadership teams. These actions emphasized diversity. These moves were not just public relations gestures. They became part of a broader shift in how luxury houses address public outrage. While competitors moved quickly to acknowledge harm and implement reforms, Dolce & Gabbana rejected this playbook, insisting on creative independence and rarely making structural changes. The contrast left Dolce & Gabbana standing apart, not just for its controversies, but for its refusal to adapt to a new standard of accountability in global fashion. Fragrance bottles lined department store shelves from Milan to Dubai, each one stamped with the D&G logo. For Dolce & Gabbana, perfume is more than a side business. It is the backbone of the brand's global income. Industry analysts estimate that fragrances and beauty products now account for nearly half of the company's 1.6 billion euros in annual revenue, with the light blue line alone bringing in hundreds of millions each year. These products reach far beyond the fashion elite, finding a home in airport duty-free shops, suburban malls, and online marketplaces. The appeal is broad, the price point accessible, and the connection to scandal is much weaker than with runway collections. Accessories and eyewear add another steady stream, licensed through giants like Luxottica, and sold in markets often insulated from Western outrage. Licensing deals for children's wear, home goods, and watches provide passive income, detached from the volatility of fashion headlines. Ready to wear, once the heart of the business, now makes up a much smaller share, less than 15% of total sales, sustained largely by private clients and high-net-worth buyers in the Middle East, Russia, and Southeast Asia. In these regions, demand for Italian glamour remains strong. Private shopping suites in Dubai and Riyadh see little impact from calls for boycotts in Europe or the United States. While Chinese retail partners pulled D&G products after the scandal in 2018, fragrance sales in Asia rebounded within 2 years, and the brand's boutiques in Europe and the Middle East continued to post strong numbers. For all the noise online, most customers interact with Dolce & Gabbana through a bottle of perfume or a pair of sunglasses, not a viral controversy. The business has built-in buffers, and for now, outrage rarely makes it to the register. Dolce & Gabbana's logo still flashes on red carpets and magazine covers, but the conversation around the brand has changed. Celebrities continue to wear custom gowns at film festivals, and fragrances fill department store aisles from Paris to Jakarta. Yet in the spaces where fashion once set the tone for culture, Dolce & Gabbana's presence has faded. Editors and critics now focus less on the silhouette of a dress and more on the headlines that follow the designers. The brand's resilience is hard to ignore. Despite repeated boycotts and global backlash, annual revenues remain strong, driven by beauty, accessories, and licensing deals that reach far beyond the world of high fashion. In markets like the Middle East and Southeast Asia, private clients still seek out the brand's signature glamour, seemingly untouched by controversies that dominate Western social media. But resilience is not always the same as relevance. Dolce & Gabbana's collections rarely spark the kind of conversation that once defined the industry. Instead, the brand often feels isolated, present, but no longer shaping the direction of fashion or public debate. The designer's refusal to conform, once a source of creative power, now risks becoming a barrier to meaningful engagement. So where does that leave Dolce & Gabbana? Is the brand's survival a testament to creative strength, or simply the result of institutional momentum and global distribution? Has controversy become its most valuable asset, or has it cost the brand its cultural voice? Like, subscribe, and comment below. Has Dolce & Gabbana lost its place for good? Or is provocation still the engine that keeps it alive? Luxury once meant shaping the culture, not just surviving its storms. Today, Dolce & Gabbana's billions come from markets and products far removed from the catwalks where relevance is forged. As fashion's values shift, mere endurance is not influence, it is isolation in plain sight. The world keeps watching, but the conversation has moved on. Has controversy become the last refuge of a brand outpaced by its own legacy? Share your thoughts below.